Hey, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Dog Walk Talk. As always, I'm your host, Jake Roos from DawgsHQ. And with me, as always, the team beat writer himself, PT Palmer Toms. Palmer, what's good, brother?
Doing well. Just got back from Auburn, made the trip down to the Plains, and was excited to see Georgia come out on top. That was a fun game to watch, a fun game to cover for sure. They got us in that 8-ball corner pocket press box up there at Jordan-Hare Stadium. A great setup there, and always exciting to travel and hit the road with the team. It's fun. It's fun. It's what you get into this business for, to experience some of those different atmospheres, and Jordan-Hare Stadium was certainly a fun one to experience.
Listen to you over here dropping the Jordan, not Jordan. You gotta be careful around these Auburn people now. They're not gonna like that one. Georgia goes in obviously to Jordan-Hare and takes care of business in impressive fashion once again. I thought really this was Georgia's probably biggest test to this point in terms of what happened on the field. I don't know that I felt that way necessarily going into this game, but based on how Auburn played, I thought that they played Georgia about as close as Georgia has been played this year, outside of maybe anybody but Clemson, perhaps. But it was an interesting test. Hey, my hat's off to Bo Nix. That kid is absolutely crazy. Just reckless abandon on every single play, just trying to make something happen at all times. It's got to be tough if you're an Auburn fan, just kind of watching the ups and downs of it. It's kind of fly by your seat, thrill a minute stuff. But, kudos to Georgia. And I wrote this after the game. Kudos to Georgia for holding the line, maintaining their assignments, and really sticking with it. I think it's easy when you're playing a guy like that to get distracted or to go away from what you do and try to keep up with what he's doing as he's trying to create something. Georgia did a great job, I thought, of that. Your impressions of the game, anything that stood out to you, anybody who caught your eye necessarily?
Yeah, just looking through the drive summaries here, I felt like Georgia came out and was a little bit rattled by the atmosphere, which isn't all too surprising. I think when you go into an atmosphere like that, and we mentioned it all week leading up to this game, this is really the first time that Georgia has played a true road environment since 2019, since their last trip to Auburn in 2019. Because Georgia Tech was a friendly environment in 2019, a lot of red and black there in Atlanta, and Georgia's had a lot of success there in Atlanta. The neutral site game, championship, the bowl game, all that. 2020 with everything that you had there. Arkansas wasn't all that crazy. Alabama was a little bit tough given the atmosphere and the build up to that game, but I think that regardless of I don't know that even compares to the 2019 Auburn atmosphere. And then again, Florida, a road atmosphere, a neutral site atmosphere, a dampened neutral site atmosphere, 2020, Missouri. Who else did they play on the road last year?
Oh Lord, I don't know. I kind of that was a long time ago, Palmer. Come on.
Yeah. and then this year, the neutral site atmosphere with Clemson and what was almost a home atmosphere at Vanderbilt. Certainly not a tough road environment. It wasn't too surprising to see Georgia come out, a little bit shell shocked there. Auburn gets the ball first, drives 17 plays, 68 yards, with what looked like it could have been a fumble, ends up being ruled a incomplete pass, intentional grounding. I can't remember how many times specifically on that first drive, but it feels like Auburn to go 17 plays, 68 yards. They were converting on fourth down and such. To bounce back from that and hold them to just a field goal there was huge. Offensively, you come out, you go 3 and out. I think again the offense was a little bit shell shocked there, but the defense does a great job of responding. Gets that tip ball interception to Kobe Dean with a great play there. Offense again doesn't look great, doesn't look super comfortable. They go 6 plays and they started at the 20-30 yard line. To Georgia looked very content to settle there for 3. But after that point, once you tie the game up, Georgia trailed for the first time all season with that after that first drive. They go 3 and out. Defense does a good job of responding and saying, hey, we're here to play, and gives the offense the field position to tie it up. Once you get past that point, I feel like everyone really, really settled in for Georgia. You get 2 straight touchdown drives offensively. You go 3 and out, 5 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out defensively. So the way that Georgia settled in, I felt like things got a little bit shaky there after that second touchdown. And I think you can account a lot of that to the injury to Jamari Salyer offensively, and on special teams. He's a guy that is a glue guy for that offensive line, a glue guy for that punt team. Auburn got some pressure on a punt there, almost got it blocked, but it was coming from the side that Jamari normally would have been on. He goes down and they take a sack on third down. They throw out a screen pass the other way just to get the ball away from Broderick Jones coming in there at left tackle, which I think is another topic we need to talk about. I thought he played well, but just the way that Georgia responded to that, they kind of had to get regrouped, and then they come out after the half and drive 10 plays, 42 yards, miss the field goal, respond with that with a 1-play 60-yard drive. I felt like the defense did a great job forcing 2 straight turnover on downs to end the first half. The big one there in the red zone, Latavius Brini with a great play in the back of the end zone reminded me of his great play against Clemson.
I think he snuck one in there. I think he probably got that was a little bit of a no call on the refs' part. Now, I will say not that Georgia didn't deserve it necessarily. I mean, there seemed like there was a lot of holding going on by the Auburn offensive line that probably wasn't. So to me, that almost felt like a little bit
overall.
Of a call.
Yeah, overall, I didn't feel like it was the best officiated game I've seen. I go back to that. What could have been a fumble was originally ruled a fumble, recovered by Georgia, and ends up being reviewed and overturned to an incomplete pass. I didn't see a great look at it. I saw one that came from behind, and it really, really looked like Trayvon Walker might have been coming in there, swatting the ball out. And that, to me, it would have been tough to overturn based off of that angle. But either way, Georgia comes out, and at the end of that half keeps them off the board. That Auburn had a chance for 3. They end up jumping off sides, Kirby playing chess not checkers, and they hold them to 0 there in that after that missed field goal opportunity for Auburn to take advantage of some momentum. Georgia gets a turnover on downs there around midfield, and then the Bulldogs hit on that 60-yard Ladd McConkey touchdown. That, to me, really kind of put the game away. 2 more scoring drives, a field goal and a touchdown, 10-play drives there. Georgia really just, once again, we saw it against Clemson. When everyone in that stadium knew Georgia was running the ball, Georgia was able to run the ball, move the ball down the field, 10 plays, 71 yards, 10 plays, 64 yards, and a lot of the times it was just handoff. You knew what was coming. Georgia did it again on the last drive, 10 plays, 30 yards to kill the clock there. So I felt like Georgia did actually they turned it over on downs just before the end of their drive, giving Auburn 30 seconds to go 55 yards with TJ Finley in there. But kept them off the board. Overall, I felt like Georgia settled into the atmosphere and played a solid game, especially considering the guys that they were missing. A very, very, very banged up football team.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, and you're kind of walking wounded even worse than you were going into this one. Like you said, Jamari Salyer goes down, Chris Smith goes down. How did Tyke end up going in there? So Brini switches over at some point, right?
Lewis Seen got the wind knocked out of him.
That's what it
coming
was.
across the middle. So Brini ended up going from star to safety, and Tyke Smith came in at star. But he was also in there on all the kickoff coverage teams. Was in there. They every time in the stadium they announced that 23 was wearing 25, meaning that Jalen Johnson and Tyke Smith were both out there. But yeah, that's how he ended up there in the game defensively.
Yeah, and I think that like you said, I mean, to me that one right before the half, the Brainy play is the one that would have kept Auburn in it. That was I felt like that was their chance to continue some momentum, to kind of get things swayed back their side, especially right before the half. Like I said, you get the no call on it, really beneficial for Georgia, obviously. And then the 60-yard touchdown. I wrote yesterday in my column after the game, I think that's the best ball we've seen a Georgia quarterback throw all year. I mean, you can't hit him any stronger than that. I mean, he's mid-stride, just going down the field, and the lad with a great finish on it. Kudos to
Maybe I'd put the Bennett to Burton one up there, but the fact that we're talking about Stetson Bennett throwing maybe the two best balls that a Georgia quarterback has thrown this year says a lot about what he's done.
Yeah, and kudos to him. I mean, I know that this is not a situation where people are or have not been thrilled that he's the guy to go. But, I think that he probably won a lot of affection back yesterday with that performance. And Auburn clearly game planned to make him put it in the air. They were not going to allow the rushing totals that Arkansas did. They weren't going to drop those 8 guys back. They were going to force Stetson Bennett to beat him with his arm. He's got enough to do that. And he showed that yesterday. I think it's encouraging personally. I think that, there's that old saying, if you got 2 quarterbacks, you don't have one. I think Georgia's quarterback situation is in a very good and capable hands right now. I think that you've got to feel great about your backup situation, with that being Stetson Bennett. And then, frankly, you're not playing with QB1 and you're still being able to produce out there. So I think that they're in a really comfortable spot. I think yesterday probably boosted things as much as anything has, probably in the eyes of fans, and probably the level of comfort with the team as well. Like you said, defensively, not a lot to really say. I mean, they just did what they did, and we're able to take care of business. And like I said, Bo Nix out there running for his life, but that's just kind of what Bo Nix does anyway. So not that different. I guess outside of the usual suspects, we've touched on Stetson. We talked about Ladd a little bit. I mean, anybody else out there that grabbed your attention? I thought it was really nice to see Darnell Washington get a couple targets his way. That one, he about Statue of Liberty, that thing, and barely left the ground to do so. I mean, he just like bunny hopped and was skying over that guy, and then makes a great reception there for a pretty nice chunk of yards after the catch. Looked like an absolute buffalo doing so, and good to see him getting worked back into the offense for sure. I think that's got to be compelling for Georgia. Brings another weapon in an offense that's not lacking for weapons, but is lacking some of its top flight weapons, I would say.
Yeah, that like that play that you described almost as a Statue of Liberty, where he snatched it out of the air. There was a moment in that press box where there was a collective gasp, like, "Oh my God, did he just do that?"
Yeah.
Almost came down with it, but and drawing the defensive pass interference there. To me, that is exactly what you want with Darnell Washington, and that's why those 2 plays that you mentioned. His ability to as a mismatch to draw some of those pass interferences, and then his toughness to take down in the open field, ran for 25 yards. You described it as a buffalo.
Yeah. I mean, that's what he looks like out there.
He does.
Imagine trying to bring him down. Jesus Christ. I mean, it would be like tackling a rhinoceros. You couldn't pay me enough to try. But to me, those 2 plays are very characteristic of exactly what you want from Darnell Washington. I would agree.
I think, as like you said, it's encouraging for Georgia fans to see him starting to get those targets again. I think if you're Todd Monken, if you're Kirby Smart, if you're these quarterbacks, you want to give Darnell Washington 4 to 5 targets a game, if not more, sure, and just let him make those plays because of his mismatch ability. Get the ball in his hands, or do your best to do that, and see how things play out. He is such a tough matchup there, and I think we started to see what a healthy Darnell Washington could look like this season. I'll go defensively for player that stood out to me, and we mentioned it with Chris Smith going down. That's Dan Jackson. The way that he stepped in at safety, led the team in tackles. Obviously, there wasn't a huge marquee play like he had the week before with the block punt, but it's just a continuation of what Kirby Smart has told us about him, that he is, one of the most respected guys on this team, such a hard worker, has earned his opportunity to be in that backfield, because he's beaten out. He's taken playing time from guys that Georgia fans were counting on at the beginning of the season. If you had told me that Dan Jackson was going to be in the secondary over Tyke Smith, if Lewis Cine and Chris Smith were to go down, and you told me Dan Jackson was going to be the one in there at safety, not Tyke Smith, I would have been shocked.
Well, if you told me that preseason that Dan Jackson was going to be back there, I would have probably said, who?
Exactly. Exactly. You saw a little bit of him in the spring game, but it was like, it's a spring game. These kind of kids get playing time. You would not have expected to see him out there making plays this year. And that's exactly what he's done. So kudos to him. Kudos to, Jamal Adai and everyone that has, Will Muschamp, the guys that are Kirby Smart, former safety himself, that's, helping bring along that secondary. It's, going back to the injuries, that is an area where Georgia is very thin. And it, there was, a moment where it was like, all right, no Lewis Cine, no Chris Smith. Who is it going to be at safety? You had seen Dan Jackson out there all game long, so you knew he was going to be in there, but you didn't really know who that second safety was going to be in. And it would have been interesting to see if Lewis had been out from the single play. They end up moving Latavius Brini in there, like we talked about, and put Tyke Smith at star. But let's say that, that this is something that if Chris Smith is out for an extended period of time, you are one play away from not really knowing what your safety position looks like. If you have Lewis Cine go down, if you have Dan Jackson go down, you're just very thin there. It was a position where Georgia lost some guys in the transfer portal. Obviously lost Richard LeCount to the NFL draft, but you had Major Burns leave. You had Darren Branch leave. Tyreek Stevenson is a guy who had played star and was able to, play that position so well that you were able to have some guys that might be, cross training between safety and star, put more of their time and emphasis at safety. So now you're in a tough position here with some guys banged up. I'm sure we'll learn more about Chris Smith's injury as the week rolls along, what his status is going forward, and what that means for the Georgia secondary. I mean, I would look at David Daniel as someone that has gotten some reps at safety that is going to have to be pushed along. Javon Bullard is another guy. Kamari Lassiter, exactly. Yep. So these guys that Georgia brought in this most recent class, they're going to have to step up. William Poole is another guy I would mention. Yep. Someone that's kind of that hybrid corner safety. It fits that star position very well. He's back from an absence early in the season. You need him to be a veteran presence and to be capable of stepping in, whether that's as a starter or whether that's in a rotational role, dime package, whatnot. You need him to be ready to go. And Kirby said it when he told us the news about Poole that he would be back from an academic situation that he was dealing with through the first 4 games. He said, we're going to need William as the season goes along. So that secondary is certainly an area. If there's one area of concern for me, it would be that secondary. They're probably more banged up. They're definitely more banged up at wide receiver, but I think that they're a little bit more talented there and a little bit more experienced. They've been able to get some of these guys some reps, and they've stepped up. Ladd McConkey stepping up. How have we gone so far into this show today without mentioning Ladd McConkey? and the way that he has stepped up, moving, with Jermaine Burton out, moving from his inside spot at in the slot out to the Z position and playing at the flanker. Had 5 catches, 135 yards. And so, to me, I go back to that safety position, that secondary position. I think that they are a little bit more thin on guys that they would feel confident in than they might be at wide receiver, because you've got tons and tons of talent at wide receiver. I don't know that you have as much of that at safety. And that's why it's such a big emphasis in this recruiting class. You're seeing it in this 2022 recruiting class, Jake, that Georgia is bringing in several defensive backs. And you're like, well, why are they bringing in so many DBs? It's because they lost 8 this past offseason. And you can't, I don't know that it's possible to replace 8 defensive backs in one offseason. So Georgia would probably be below their allotted number of scholarships in the secondary. So that if Chris Smith is out for an extended period of time, which we don't know yet, that would be a concern of mine, and that's certainly going to be concerning as Georgia has a tough matchup this week against Kentucky.
Yeah, well, and as you mentioned, I mean, this secondary, they're going heavy in 2022 because you're going to lose Chris Smith. You're probably going to lose Lewis Seen. I think that everybody kind of expects that. Amir Speed's going to be gone. Latavius Breeny's going to be gone. You're missing 4 or 5 dudes out of this defensive backfield after this year as well. They got 3 guys committed already. Probably got another 4 to 5 that they're looking at, and I think that they could take as many as 6 in this class if they can work them out. I think that would be ideal for them. But look, they're shooting for the number 1 recruiting class. They're already number 1 on the field, though. Alabama drops their Saturday night contest to the Texas A&M Aggies, and Dogs climb to number 1 in the coaches NAP poll this week. Not unexpected after we saw it from Alabama. I wrote last week in our poll story that it was Georgia's only path, it seemed, to get to number 1 was Alabama had to drop one. Wasn't going to be a situation, I didn't think, where they would be able to overtake them otherwise. Georgia number 1, in my opinion, not a huge deal. I think that it just puts a little bit bigger bullseye on their back, maybe gives some teams a little bit of extra juice when they're playing them. Kentucky's going to be juiced, wanting to keep their undefeated streak going. We'll touch on that later this week, but that Florida's going to want to come for that. I mean, if that would, with them being out of college football playoff contention, that's as good. That would be as good, I think, of an outcome for a season for the Gators to knock off a potential number 1 Georgia team and kind of ruin that for them. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I just don't think it means much right now. I don't. It's probably a cool feeling. Georgia ranked in seasons. This is the first time since 1982 that they've been ranked number 1. They were preseason number 1 in 2008. And after a pretty dismal performance against Georgia Southern, fell to number 2 going into that Central Michigan game. So been a while since Georgia's been here. And hey, kudos to Kirby Smart, man. Listen, that's another thing checked off the list, right? That's another thing that they haven't done in a very, very long time. He's been able to take them there. Got to feel good about that. Any thoughts on number 1? Like I said, to me, I just don't see it as a big story.
No. I mean, like you joked about on Twitter, I feel certain that Kirby and all of his players are going to want to talk all about that this week. No, it's not as big of a deal. I think it makes it a bigger target on the Dogs, and they've got to be that much, more ready to come play each week. I talked to a lot of fans leaving Auburn that were saying, hey, We'd rather be number 2. We'd rather, be within striking distance and knowing that if Georgia were to handle their business all the way through, they'd have that shot to take the number 1 spot from Alabama, in Atlanta or in Indianapolis. I think if I don't think it's a huge deal. Like you said, kudos to Kirby Smart for getting that.
It's cool. It's a cool footnote. It's
absolutely a cool footnote.
It's an interesting thing because it's been so long since it's happened.
And I can only imagine, what the roar is going to be like at Sanford Stadium when the PA announcer announces, your number one ranked Georgia Bulldogs, because like you said, it's been quite some time. So it's an exciting situation. But it's not they've got a lot of work to do to keep that, to keep that arbitrary title.
Yeah. Well said.
It does not mean anything if you're not number one on January 11th or whenever the day after that national championship game is. You can hoop and holler over your week 7 number one ranking all you want, but that's not the one that you want if you're Georgia, if you're a Georgia fan, if you're a Georgia player, if you're a Georgia coach, if you're anyone that cares about this program. So I think it's cool. I think it just makes the target on their backs that much bigger. And Kentucky absolutely would love to take that. They could feel slighted that they're not in the top 10, with this number 11 ranking there. I noted this today in the College Game Day story with Game Day rolling into town. It's interesting because, the 6 previous times that they've come to Athens, it's been a top 10 matchup. So this is the first one that's not a matchup of 2 top 10 teams. Kentucky had a chance to get in there and comes in at number 11. Like you said, we'll talk a lot more about that game later this week. But in terms of, how Sunday shakes out and what that means for this game, like we said, I think it's just a bigger target on Georgia's back.
I would agree. They've got a chance to kind of maybe shake the monkey off their back too about, this idea that they don't play well under pressure, or, they have this in previous times when they've had number one, like 2008, they come out and kind of lay an egg. They've got a chance to sort of knock some of that stigma off as well.
Jake, I've got a question for you.
All right, hit me.
Question for you. So going back to our conversation about Stetson Bennett, and you made a great point that this is a little bit of a confidence boost for Georgia fans to see him really his first time going into an atmosphere like that. Because like we said, a 2020 season, he hadn't been tested by an atmosphere like that. Kirby Smart said it after the game, and for him to go in there, play Georgia brand football, throw for over 200 yards, the team rushed for over 200, third straight week they've done that. In terms of what the future holds for this team and Stetson Bennett and JT Daniels, my assumption is that we would see Stetson again on Saturday. My guess is you play Stetson this week and you try and get to that bye week to give JT that much more time to get healthy and potentially bring him back.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, I think that's the right move. The way Stetson's been playing, that makes sense to me. Why wouldn't you do that? I mean, look, the line came out at 24.5 with probably the assumption that either one of them can go. So I think that, I think that you go with Stetson, give it another week for JT to heal. And like you said, you get through that bye week. All right. Now by Florida, I'm expecting that JT needs to be back. That to me, that seems like, I'm not saying that I don't know the severity of the injury, but if the injury is what they're calling it and they're saying what it is, it would seem that the timeline would line up for that to be the case. So yeah, I think I expect Stetson this week, and I got no problem with that. I think that'll be just fine. I think that they're capable of doing they'll be capable of doing a lot of the same things against Kentucky that they did against Auburn or Arkansas for that matter. So I'm not worried about that at all. I think that's either way it goes. To be honest with you.
And I think for Georgia fans, this whole quarterback situation has been such a dominant storyline so far this season. I mean, it started week 2. We were headed into that UAB game, and we were talking about JT Daniels and his health, and whether it was going to be Carson Beck, whether it was going to be Stetson Bennett. That whole frenzy over there. JT returns for South Carolina. We got, almost a week off of the quarterback injury talk, after his performance against South Carolina. You felt like he was going to go against Vanderbilt, but then, coming back off of that, we're right back in the thick of things with the talk ahead of Arkansas and Auburn. I almost feel like if you're a Georgia fan, the sooner you accept that Stetson Bennett is going to be the starter on Saturday, the better you'll feel going into the game. And if it ends up being JT, then you're pleasantly surprised, but you got to feel good about what Stetson Bennett has done, in this offense. 37 points against Arkansas, 34 points against Auburn, 56 against UAB. So you got to feel good about what Stetson has done. And I think that's my thought there, that that Georgia's going to roll with Stetson again. That's my expectation. We'll obviously keep you all up to date this week as we continue to probe Kirby Smart about the quarterback situation. And, I know he's so excited to talk about that. But
number one, and you got a quarterback situation going on. Boy, it's all his favorite topics wrapped up in one. Speaking of quarterbacks,
a lot of injury talk.
Speaking of quarterbacks, I do want to touch on, we got out on the road on Friday night, had a chance to get up to Rabun County and see Gunnar Stockton, 2022 quarterback commit for the Bulldogs, break the GHSA record for total touchdowns in a career, surpassing Deshaun Watson in that category. He put up 6 on the night when I was there, broke the record tied the record with 3, I think, broke it with 4, and then tacked on another 2 just for good measure. Why not? Dominant performance for him. Great to see him and get to see that moment for him. It was really, really neat to witness that and see them kind of stop the game for a minute and acknowledge it over the loudspeakers. And, had a chance to talk with him after the game. You can go check out our after action report at DawgsHQ. Basically, I broke down his game, and he was playing against Grovetown out of Augusta, which is home to 2023 defensive back commit Marcus Washington Jr. Kind of went through both of those guys and their performances on Friday night. I'll tell you what, that's a pair of really good players that Georgia has coming down the pike. Really liked what I saw out of them. So kudos to Gunnar Stockton. We will have an interview with him this week over at DawgsHQ, so don't miss that either. Palm, anything else here to close it up, man? I mean, I guess now it's on to Kentucky, right?
On to Kentucky. I put that in Rest and React, wrapped up with that. Just another big game this week. It's been we were looking forward to that October stretch, all of September after that Clemson game. It was, a little bit of a grind to get through UAB, South Carolina, and Vanderbilt. But, as you looked ahead at October, the schedule, I really think it would have come as a huge surprise to Georgia fans to get 2, not 1, but 2 top 15 matchups at home this season.
Of course.
And the shocking game day twice. And who would have expected Arkansas and Kentucky to be borderline top 10, top 15 matchups? It's the beauty of the sport. It's the beauty of the sport that is college football that we love so much.
Yeah. Meanwhile, you got Clemson barely hanging on in the polls. I mean, just really struggling to stay involved. So, what a crazy,
others receiving votes.
What an insane season so far. All right, we're gonna wrap it up for tonight. That's been Dog Walk Talk for Palmer Times. I'm Jake Roos. Thanks for tuning in.